meeting. Please stand as you're able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to test my microphone. Can you folks hear me? Can board members hear me? Okay. All right. Maybe I wasn't close enough. All right. So board members, you have the agenda in front of you. If there is someone who would be willing to make a motion approving the agenda.
Madam President, move to approve the agenda.
Motion by Lynn, second by Dan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Sandy, recognition.
Thank you so much. We are so pleased to share tonight. We have with us Carol Dolly, Director of Choral Activities at the middle school. And if you will join us, Carol, at the mic along with the 5 students. 5 middle school students were selected to be members of the North Central American Choral Directors Association Honors Choir. Now, when I say North Central, I mean there are 6 states: Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Nebraska. And the 5 students were selected from over 1,300 audition CDs that were submitted. So this is a very special honor. So Carol, why don't you talk about it? I think they just took part last week.
This weekend.
Just this past weekend.
I was gone Wednesday through Saturday. The kids were there Thursday.
Carol, can we have you step up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
To the microphone. Give me some space. Yeah, the choral convention, it's a divisional one, and it was Wednesday through Saturday, and it was real exciting for me because I was part of the steering committee, so I got to meet a lot of people, and I worked with a Czechoslovakian boys choir and many choirs. It was just the top of the tops. So these kids were able to be a part of that. They auditioned with me. We had the guidelines set up by the North Central American Choral Directors Association, what they had to do on this audition CD that we sent in, and it was very specific, and it took at least a half an hour. Each one of them had to sign up with the time for me, and they had to have a song prepared before that, and then whatever the guidelines were, we put on the CD, and we labeled it, and we sent it in. When the people saw these CDs, they did not know that it was from me, because it might have been a friend of mine, and that wouldn't be fair. They just knew from what state. And so we didn't, when did we find out? I don't know. They did the CDs, and I think they found out about 2 months later. So there were 5, and there's, this is Claire Weber and Trevor Olson, and they can talk to you in a minute, and this is Noah Bennett, and we're missing Jack Henry Linus and Katie Altman. And I thought they were going to be here, and maybe they'll still show up. So the kids were there Thursday, they were out of school Thursday and Friday for this. Their parents took them down there. Their parents were their chaperones. And they worked with nationally known conductors, and they were actually two different groups. There was and they've never done this before, the middle level girls choir and the middle level boys choir. Now they've had middle level girls choirs before, but they haven't had middle level boys choirs. And it was, I think, only the 2nd time in the United States that a national choral convention has done something like that. And these guys really had a good time. They'll tell you some things, I suppose. One of the things that was really interesting about the girls' choir, that they did rehearse with me, all the groups rehearsed with me, separate occasions, after school to prepare for the music. And then when they got down there, then they're working with all these other students from all these other states. But the girls learned 3 pieces with me, and then they got there and they learned another piece with all the girls. And then the 5th piece they composed right there with the directors and presented it as part of the concert, and it was just fabulous. I couldn't believe I need to know how they did that. The boys also, they didn't learn 3 pieces with me, they learned 4, and then they learned a 5th one with their directors when they got down there. So they were able to experience different directors and different methods on producing sound, and of course they have everybody there that absolutely wants to be there. There's no talking in the back row and chewing gum, things that when they're this level, when these kids reach this level and they really care passionately about their music, it's just everybody's on the same page and it really comes together for them. So I will be quiet and let them maybe introduce themselves and tell you something of what they enjoyed.
Not all at once. One thing I really liked about our choir is that we had soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. It was really interesting to see how low the basses could sing and how high the sopranos could sing. And another thing is just how well we blended on stage and the song choice that we had.
You can pull it down, yeah.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the choir was that you were really encouraged to use your treble voice instead of, just taking it down the octave and using your, your bass tenor voice. And that everyone was there, or everyone there wanted to be there and really, really loved to sing.
One thing I really enjoyed was how everyone had already earned their spot and they'd already put in the time and they really wanted to be there. And I was a soprano 1, and when we wrote a song, it wasn't like it was just soprano and alto. It was soprano 1, soprano 2, and alto. So that soprano 1s got to sing really high, and the soprano 2s got their range, and the altos got their range too.
Great. Other questions from the board members for the students?
Can we hear something? Yeah.
They will be getting a CD, each one of them,
Wonderful.
when they're ready. So, yeah, we'll bring it back.
Put 'em on the spot.
Okay. Go ahead, Mary.
So I'm wondering if any of you are considering a career in music.
Not in particular, I guess.
Yet.
Not yet? Well, certainly that's something that we hope you'll think about, because you certainly have talents that you've been able to share with others and people have enjoyed, and you're enjoying making music. So thank you.
Congratulations on your experience, all of you. Thank you. All right, Sandy.
And the second one is also a middle school highlight, so we're going to ask Dustin Miller, who is a business teacher at the middle school, to come on up. And I think he has a few of his students with him as well. 8th grade students from Dustin Miller's economics and stock market class at Hudson Middle School have won the 1st, 3rd, and 7th place in the middle school division of the Wisconsin Stock Market Simulation, which is a 10-week competition for fall semester. And please note that on our trimester system, that means the students had to complete this after they left Mr. Miller's class. So they kept at it even without him kind of overseeing that while they were in class. So Dustin, tell us a little bit about the competition, please.
Well, the students basically, my class is economics, stock market. They learn the basics, and then when they do this simulation, well, they do a practice one, a free one, online, get the bugs out of the system, so to speak, and then they have competed in the Economics Wisconsin competition. They competed against 13, well, it's close to 1,300. I think it's like 2 shy. It's like 1,298 different teams across the state, high school, middle school, elementary, and they basically get $100,000 virtual cash, and they have to increase the value of it. So they can purchase stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and the students, they're on their own for the most part. I'll show them a few things, but every day they're given an opportunity to trade, and that's what they did. So these 2 ladies here, they ended up taking 1st in the middle school division and 15th in the out of all 1,300. They did an excellent job. They were actually 1st in the state for a while, and then back in October, November, the market was kind of more volatile than it is now. So, yeah, I don't know if they burnt out or what, because they were trying to keep up with other teams, and the market was changing, so they were going with the downs and the ups. And did you guys do some short selling too? Yeah, so they were basically, going with some bear stocks when the market was down and trying to find what was going up. So, but they did an awesome job. And then I had 2 other groups that did really well also. So it's fun for them. So, did you guys want to say anything?
Ladies, can you share a little bit about some of the things you enjoyed about the simulation? Just a little bit.
And what your investing strategy might have been.
Please speak slowly.
Go to. Okay, well, it's kind of fun because whatever happened in the game kind of happened in real life. So then we actually ended up gaining like $20,000, and it went up and down a lot. So there's a point when I think we were like in 50th place or something, but then like, so I don't know, it changed every day. So.
Incredible. Could I just ask the young ladies what was their biggest winner?
Well, we did a lot of, we sold all of us really quickly, but we did bear stocks because for most of it, the market was really low. And then we didn't really keep any of like the big companies because those were like really unpredictable. But we did a lot of oil companies too.
Okay. Great.
Call. All right. Please.
Well, the thing that I really liked about the stock market was I liked how it kind of interacted with the real world, because if the market was going up, then those stocks that you actually bought went up too, or if it was going down, those went down. So it was kind of fun to play with the real things too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and congratulations.
And then, Barb, if you'd want to go over, Destin does have the official plaques. The students later on will receive individual ones, but if you want to. There's a dad back there who would love a photo op.
Oh, there you go. That's a 20% return. Yeah, that's great. Oh, I see. This is the first place team. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. And then I'm going to ask Carol Dolly to come back up. One of our choir students arrived, so I think we'd also like to recognize him as well.
This is Jack Henry Linus, and he just got here, but I know he wants to share something with you about how his experience went in Madison.
Okay.
In Madison, I thought it was really fun because we got to sing with all boys choir and sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses or baritones, which is really cool because I've never done that before. And I also liked singing 4-part songs that blended really well together.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Okay, we are moving to the superintendent's report section of the agenda this evening, so I will turn it over to Mary.
And this is a middle school night, so I hope our middle school parents and students will stay just for a few more minutes because we want to recognize the middle school and announce a wonderful, wonderful award that they've received for the second time. And this is a state-level award presented by the Principals Association in our state. And our middle school, for the second time, has received a recognition as a middle school of excellence. One middle school is named in each of the following categories: the high poverty, a small middle school, a medium size, and of course Hudson Middle School, being the largest middle school in the state of Wisconsin, is in that large category. The middle school qualified for this by first our students achieving very well on the knowledge and concept exam, which is the state exam. And our students scored in the upper 10% in math in that area. And then the middle school, because of that, is encouraged to submit more information for the Principals Association to consider in relationship to that. The middle school received this award in 2010 as well. So this is really an honor for Hudson Middle School under the direction of Principal Dan Koch. And Dan, will you come forward as I say a few more things about this? This is recognition not only of the achievement of our students, but the program and the staff, and certainly the leadership in the building. So this is a wonderful honor for all of the middle school, everyone involved in the middle school, our parents and our community as well. And Dan, I know you might have a few comments about that.
Well, yes. First of all, we are very proud to have achieved this recognition again. Second time in, 3 years now that this has happened. And I think that I would be remiss if I didn't point out something that you all had the opportunity to bear witness to tonight, and that was the success that our students had as they were talking about their music experience, and the success that they had as they were talking about the stock market experience. There was another line that you heard accompanied all of that, and it was really fun. And that's very much a part of what we do. And I think our students don't think things that are fun because they're just easy. I think they think they're fun because they're challenging and stimulating and get them to open their minds and think quite a bit. This award in this particular way represents that kind of a program which we've established, and thanking you for your support, we've established at the middle school and hope to continue for a very long time. It is a comprehensive look at the middle school. It deals with not only our curricular programs, but the teaming and the collaboration that we have in our building in terms of how it's managed and how it operates. It deals with the way in which we approach solving problems in the building. It deals with the role that teachers play in terms of teacher leadership. The personalization of the program for students is quite high on their list of criteria, and it's kind of a joy, although it's a bit laborious. It's kind of a joy to fill the forms out, because at the same time you get to reflect and take a look at the things that you actually do day in and day out to meet the needs of our students. And finally, I've been blessed, to be here and to work with the staff that I have in our building. I say to them as often as I can. In my career, I've been in 5 school districts. This will be my last one. I have never worked with a finer group of teachers than the ones I have now. So this is to them as well. This is the work that they do day in and day out. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to look at both ends of the spectrum. Those who achieve very highly, and then some who do not experience as much success. Sometimes issues pop up that seem to paint or color the landscape, when in fact 1,300 students go to school there. And for the vast, vast majority of those students, it's a positive experience of growth and achievement for them. And our teachers are the ones who support that and move those students along that continuum. So I'm very, very proud of the middle school. I'm very proud of the staff, and indeed indebted to you for continuing to support us, because we have some unique requirements to be a middle school. And your willingness to stay the course in supporting the middle school has been very, very important to us. So thank you.
It should just be noted that Hudson Middle School is the largest middle school in the state of Wisconsin, and certainly achieving this award twice in a very short period of time is a large honor. And particularly when we think of that middle school being over capacity by 169 students, and the staff working in those kind of conditions, and our students as well. So congratulations, Dan, carry that back to your staff. It's a tribute to their work each day with our students. Moving on, we have reported a number of times about the class of 2011's advanced placement results. And this is another way to look at those results, and it's really a comparison in the state of Wisconsin. So this is some new information for us and gives us another way to look at comparison. The state of Wisconsin, out of the Midwest region, placed first as far as the 2 areas that are looked at in relationship to AP scores. One is the number of students taking AP tests, and Wisconsin increased their percentage by 3.7% over last year, and 27.8% of the students in the state of Wisconsin took AP tests. We also look at the percentage of students who essentially pass the AP exams, that it's scored on a 5-point scale, and 3 or 4 or 5 are all passing. So anything over 3 or higher is a passing score. And Wisconsin topped the states in the Midwest region, and that includes 2, 4, 6, about 16 states with the highest score of 19.4% achieving those results. When we come and return that to Hudson, we've reported on our scores, which are even higher than that. But if we look at this map, again, this is another way to look at Wisconsin and also look at the Hudson School District. And I would have you focus on the dark green, which the first map should be on participation. And it is. So the dark green is the highest category, 30% more students actually taking this exam in the various high schools around the state. And you can see there the green areas are very clustered. There's the area around the suburban area in Milwaukee. There's the suburban area around Madison. And then there's the western Wisconsin. There are some outliers as well, and congratulations to those districts. But you can see that we in western Wisconsin are competing with districts in the metro areas in the state of Wisconsin. So if you turn to the next one, Diane, that shows the scores and the performance rate. So that's looking at it in relationship to districts and districts, their percentage of students who are achieving the score of 3 or higher, 3, 4, or 5. And again, the highest percentage identified in the state map by district is 30% or greater. And now you can see that the dark green has reduced very significantly in the state of Wisconsin. And again, we have clusters, but they're smaller this time. And certainly Hudson on both maps is in the highest category. I would remind us again that Hudson has been named by the College Board nationally on the AP Honor Roll. And the 367 districts in the whole country have been named to this honor roll. Just to give you a reference point, in Wisconsin there are 425 districts. So 365 districts have been named this year to that honor roll, and Hudson is one of those. And the honor roll has been out for 2 years. Hudson's been named to that honor roll both years. And when you look nationally, there are 313 districts across the country who have been named to that honor roll twice. And Hudson is one of the 113. So certainly that speaks to the level of achievement in the high rigorous courses that we have in AP. And just congratulations to our teachers and to the high school. But it's a systems approach, so it starts at elementary and works all the way through the middle school that we just recognized this evening, and then into the high school. So appreciate everybody's work on that, because it allows our students to be performing at such high levels. And this increases their success at college. It's tied to, AP results are tied to success in college. So if I move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the referendum and some information presentations that we will be doing in the community. You know, one thing we want to make sure that the referendum on April 3rd, that our community has the opportunity to vote on the purchase of the St. Croix Meadows dog track, that they are informed about the issues around that purchase and the information that we have in the district and why we've made that choice, and the board has supported that. So as a result of that, we have 3 community information sessions that we will be holding. Administrators and board members will present information to our community and then answer questions. So we hope our community will become engaged and join us in one of those evenings and learn more about the referendum and the reasons behind that. And I'll just keep going unless you have some questions. On to enrollment. The chart that is displayed is the official enrollment count, the second one that comes in January. This is an official count that is used to determine state aid. So as we look at this chart, you know, what has changed since the September count? So if you just look at the green rows going across, those numbers for each of the schools are the numbers that we had in September. And then following that, you'll see January 13th date in the white row, and that is those are the numbers that we had on the official date in January. And so just a few things about comparison in relationship to that. Our elementary numbers are up by 26 students. Again, that has ramifications for us as we look at those students moving through our system to the middle school, which we've talked about before, and it's overcrowding, and then we move on to the high school with those students in the future. The middle school is down by about 10 students, and the high school is down about 4, and that's fairly common at this time of the year at the secondary level. I would note that this is the first time all kindergarten through 8th grade classes are above 400. So that's a change that we're seeing, and those 400s range from 403 in the lowest class to 443 in the largest class. Again, those will be moving into the high school in the future, and certainly concerning as they move middle school and then high school as well. District-wide, if we look at the enrollment change since September official count, was 12 additional students. I also just want to make one other note on this chart, and that would be the numbers for homeschooled students. And if we look at the total amount, it said in September there were 54, and in January there are 120. It looks like, wow, we've had a lot of open enrollment students. Actually, that is not accurate. The open enrollment students are required to register with the Department of Public Instruction in October, so our September count is incomplete, and then this count in January is much more accurate. Does any board members have any questions about the numbers on the chart? All right, then let's move on to kindergarten registration. These are preliminary registration numbers, and I want to really emphasize that word preliminary. And you can see the yellow columns are the 3 years, 2010, 2011, and the most current 2012 kindergarten registration. The white numbers are the actual enrollments in that September official count that we have. And what you can see when you look from a yellow bar to the white column is there's a lot of change. And if we just look down at the totals, and let's look for 2010 in February to 2010 in September, so 413 students became 459 at that time. And then in 2011 to 2012, 353 became 428. We changed the time of registration, I believe, a little bit before this so that we could have more accurate information. We know it isn't the number of students that we're going to have that start the year. And our trend over time is this is preliminary numbers that grow from now on until the start of school. So February right now, we have 321 students officially gone through the whole process of filling out the papers, returning them, and registering. And we also have about 21 students who are on our lists but have not yet completed all the paperwork. And so some of those will come to us, and we're not sure if all of them will come to us in that time period. Also included in this number and our early childhood students who will move into kindergarten. So that's another way for additional students to be added to this number. And then students we're not aware of at the present time. So 321 is a partial, what we can say, it's a partial number of the students that we can expect in the fall. And we expect it to grow, and how much it's going to grow, we're not sure at the present time. Board members, do you have any questions about that? No. Okay. All right, moving on to open enrollment dates, which is my last item to talk about. The legislature, Wisconsin legislature recently, in fact in February, changed the open enrollment law and extended it from what it has been in the past. In fact, at the last meeting we announced this, that there would be 3 weeks to register, apply for open enrollment in February, from February 6th to the 24th. And they've extended that into a 3-month application period, February through April, as you can see the dates above. This changes our process and our timeline for taking action. It makes that window bigger for parents to apply, and then the board will take action in May to consider applications so that we can meet the first deadline in June to notify parents. Any questions?
Just confirmation, Mary, I believe that this new timing is consistent with what we have done in past years, yes?
No, this is brand new. And maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking.
So the time frame for, so for example, last year, when did we approve open enrollments?
Nancy, was it March?
Okay, all right. Thank
So
you.
this is delayed.
Extended.
Yep.
Okay.
And that would conclude the items that I need to cover today.
All right. So we are now on the reports section of the agenda, and the first item under that section is future secondary construction referendum finance projection. Tim.
Yeah, I'm going to have Brian Brewer from Baird make his way up front here. Brian's going to talk a little bit about the potential for the district to borrow for a secondary school solution, for a building solution, and talk a little bit about the interest rate environment and some of the opportunities that are available for that. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you, and the chart is up there. So.
And Brian, you want to make sure you have the button up and then really close to you.
Good evening.
There you go.
Much better. Good to see everyone again. As Tim introduced, I wanted to come here tonight to update you on a few things that, from a planning perspective, as you move into the community discussions about the referendum on April 3rd. I saw the 3 informational meetings you have coming up. So I just wanted to give you some updated information that may help you to address some of the questions that you may receive as you're out discussing this referendum. The first is the interest rate environment. I've been in front of you quite a few times over the last few years talking about how incredibly low the interest rates are. Well, yet again, I'm here to say that at the beginning of 2012, as we have moved it through January and into February, the municipal bond market has been establishing even new lows. In terms of a timing to lock in the long-term investment in purchasing the site for your future secondary school solution, it keeps getting better. I don't know how many times I can keep coming back to tell you that, but I'm here yet again in late February, mid-February to update you that it's still a strong trend in terms of a borrowing environment for a long-term financing. So that is very good, and that helps you to avoid interest cost on this, which allows more dollars to go directly into the actual purchase price. The other long-range consideration that I would like you to go into these community discussions with is, and we've talked about this visual that's up on the screen before. We primarily have talked about it in terms of how we would layer in the new financing for the land purchase over a 20-year period. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time to talk about how this debt payment structure, each one of these bars each year going forward represents your total payment for referendum approved debt. So as you see those bars declining in future years, that provides a future levy capacity, if you will, to make new payments on a future in school investment that would be most likely related to the secondary school solution. So I wanted to give you an idea of what can those drops help you to finance before you needed to ask for an increase in your payments for referendum-approved debt. I've run a number of different scenarios, assuming different interest rate environments, different repayment terms, different types of repayment structures. So, take this with a grain of salt in that there are a lot of moving parts and assumptions that go into these plans. However, at your current debt payment level, with the reductions that you see in those debt payments in each year going forward, under a number of scenarios, you would have the ability to finance up to $40 million towards the cost of a secondary school solution in the future. The exact amount up to that $40 million is yet to be determined and would be based on some of those key variables, such as, are we still in this historically low interest rate environment? Have you been able to maintain your outstanding credit rating, which is currently a AA1, the one notch from the highest? And then some of the final board decisions on timing, repayment terms, length of borrowing, a number of things that would impact the repayment structure. But given the set of circumstances that you have, the fact that you are nearing the final 3 to 4 years worth of payments on previous referendum-approved investments in school facilities over the last 15, 20 years, that's providing you with a window of opportunity to address a portion of whatever the secondary school solution is, and whenever that comes forward for a community vote and community discussion. So I know we've talked about this payment chart and talked about it as it's great that payments are reducing in the future, but I don't know that we've ever really talked about how much of a benefit is that. Mm-hmm. And I know that's going to be a part of this conversation because this is the initial step of a long-term plan. And so I wanted you to have a little bit of background information on that as you head into those conversations.
Madam President.
Lynn.
Brian, I have a question for you. You mentioned that there's some assumptions built into this model that you used. Can you characterize for the audience and for the board on how you would characterize the assumptions that you made on interest rate? Are they conservative? Are they?
What I did was I ran a few different types of repayment plans based on different interest rate levels. So if interest rates stay where they are, in this historically low environment that we've been in the last couple of years, that would allow you to finance up to $40 million in a shorter period of time. If interest rates were to increase to more normalized type levels that we've seen over the last 15, 20 years, what we may end up needing to do to approach a $40 million is to phase in a financing plan and use a longer repayment term. So the trade-off, is the higher the interest rate, the longer the repayment would need to be to stay at the current tax levy, applicable to debt repayment. So it's a give and take, and there are even more variables than the two I just described there, but those are some of the items that we would be evaluating as we got to that point. I mean, the key message here is that there is a portion of whatever that solution is can be absorbed within the current debt payment structure that you have. It's not to say that this is the answer. It's to say that that is something in your planning over the next few years that you have available, and that you can address some of the costs before you need to ask for an increase over the current.
But certainly it's substantial capacity.
Yes. Yes.
And is there other debt that we have that we could look at refinancing, or is that considered in this model as well?
Yes, that's a great question. Each time that I visit you, I review, and each time we hit new lows, I review, your opportunities to refinance. As we've discussed, we've addressed the things that we can address so far. There are others that are outstanding that we either need to get a little closer to the redemption date, or we have to wait all the way until the redemption date. But there are other opportunities that we can address, and depending on the timing of when a secondary school solution would be brought forward. If it, in those first 3 to 4 years where you see the debt payments up near the current, we would have to do a little bit of refinancing and restructuring to absorb that new debt payment, and that would be part of these models that I've evaluated.
And the reason we're not looking at those now is because they're not eligible to be refinanced at this time. Everything that we could refinance at the lower rate, we have done.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Are there other questions for Brian?
I just hit.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Brian, nice to see you again.
Hi, good to
Could
see
you
you.
remind me and our audience again how many school districts in Wisconsin enjoy our AA1 credit rating? Oh,
I wish you had prepped me for that.
sorry.
There are only 6 that are higher than you out of the 425 school district, 424 at this point. And I believe in the AA1 category, I want to say it's 13 or 12 or 13, right in that neighborhood.
Okay.
So
That's kind of as I remember too. I just remember we were in a very, very rare company, and I think that it's nice for myself to be reminded, and the public as well, that this district has done a stellar job. Small thanks to Mr. Erickson over there at maintaining that credit rating, and that's very significant. So thanks.
Okay. Tom, did you have a question?
Brian, can you explain the increase over 2012, the box that's on the display up there, and what that number looks like, 9 cent. I have old eyes, so I can't see it exactly.
yes.
Can you explain what that represents?
So the blue bar is the currently approved and outstanding debt.
Right.
The green sliver that's there is an estimate of what your first payment in 2012-13 would be on the land financing, the St. Croix Meadows purchase. So the estimate for this referendum is that you're asking for the authority to increase.
Yes.
You're asking for the authority to borrow $8,250,000, but you're estimating that the increase for 12-13 from this year is 0.09 cents per thousand.
Okay.
So saying it a different way or an easier way to digest is for each $100,000 of property, you're asking for a $9 increase.
That's what we thought. We just want to make sure that's understood.
I think you've been discussing it as on an average property value of $200,000 in the community, it's $18 is how that would work.
Any other questions? Pat?
Now, the red dotted line that goes across there, that's looking at the $40 million for a building on the site if the referendum goes through, correct? The red line?
What the red line represents, I was just trying to give a visual of what the 2012-13 levy for debt is estimated to be, and so I carried that across to give you a visual of how, when those debt payments reduce, the existing and already approved debt payments reduce, I wanted to give you kind of a visual of the room I'm talking about. I'm basically drawing a line from next year's estimated levy out into the future. That's what that is.
That doesn't have anything with the 40 million. Okay.
Not really. I mean, that just became kind of what I was solving for. I was trying to say, if I wanted to keep it at roughly that dotted line all the way across, how much of a new building project could you finance within that window of space?
So it would have been the 40 million.
Yeah, so up to 40 million is kind of,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the tax would basically, once the increase comes, or we get that, if they vote for the land, which would increase at $8 for 100, which could be around, $18. If we keep it at the 40, which I don't know if we can, but that our taxes won't go up as much. Okay, we'd have that amount to be working with. Okay.
Correct.
Brian, I have one question, and this is a question actually that came up in one of the community information sessions that we've done. And again, just to make sure that we're clear for the public, the green bar, which represents the assumed borrowing costs that would be added for the land purchase, the magnitude or the scale of that debt payment that gets added on certainly grows as we move forward through time. And can you just explain what's happening with the way we've structured those assumptions?
Yes, of course. And it's purposeful that the magnitude of the green bars change because you do have an unlimited way of financing this $8,250,000. You're asking for the authority to borrow, and then up to a 20-year repayment period, you have a number of ways to structure that repayment. At the Finance Committee meetings in November, I believe it was, we had discussed a variety of ways to finance the land. And what this repayment schedule indicates is that you would keep your payments of this new sample borrowing low in the first 10 years, and then from the 11th year to the 20th year, you would have a level repayment, so level debt payment. And one of the reasons to do that is because we know where we are with the lowest rates in the last 50 years. The committee felt locking that in now and then coming back later with whenever the secondary solution becomes a topic, if rates had risen at that point, now you're paying that debt off quicker. Right. So you're paying off the land purchase a little bit further out in the future, locking in the current longer term rates, yeah, and positioning the district to be able to access the ability to repay debt quicker should rates be higher.
Great.
In the future. So that's why.
Yep. Thanks, Brian. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Tim, I think you're going to take the next one, the land purchase, April 3rd referendum for the St. Croix Meadows and the appraisal.
Yes, I am. And I'm going to have Jeff White and Paul Daly come up to the table. Jeff is the president of Valuation Specialists, a full-service appraisal firm, and Jeff and Paul are both licensed appraisers, and they perform an appraisal, a market value appraisal for the St. Croix Meadows dog track. And with that, I'm going to have them talk a little bit about the process, and then certainly you'll have opportunity to ask them questions on the process and the data within the appraisal report. So put that red button up, Jeff.
Push the red button.
Red button.
Yeah, just there you go. Okay. And then microphone right up as close as you can get it without swallowing.
First of all, I'm not sure if my wife is happy that you scheduled this on Valentine's Day. I think she's happy. Anyway, my name is Jeff White. Again, I'm owner of a company called Valuation Specialists. We have an office in Eau Claire, one in Minneapolis, and one in Eau Claire. We appraise a lot of different things, from business valuation, stock of privately held companies, to commercial real estate, residential properties, equipment for a lot of different companies throughout the country. Most of our work is done in the Midwest, primarily in the Minneapolis area and western Wisconsin. This is kind of a unique situation, kind of a unique appraisal. And there's not a lot of appraisers who like to do the tough ones, but we do, and that's kind of why we like to do this type of engagement. What I want to try to do is just kind of give you an overview and then kind of let you ask questions if there's anything specifically that you want me to address in the report. Well, first of all, I want you to know that we are independent appraisers, and it's funny, tonight was the first time we found out there was actually an agreement, that you have a purchase agreement for the property, which is kind of different. Typically, we already know what the price is. Whether or not that has an impact on us, but in this particular case, we really didn't know until we were informed tonight that there was an actual purchase or proposed purchase of the property by the school district. We actually, when you're looking at appraisal, we have to first identify the scope. Really, what are we engaged to do? And our engagement really involved three different aspects. One is kind of what is the existing structure? What kind of value does that portray to the school district? What is some of the proposed structure and what exactly is there? And kind of a form of a hypothetical. Not so much hypothetical, but kind of a combination of all three come into play here. We basically used three approaches. We used the cost approach, which is one method under the cost approach was where we create a value for the land and then put an estimate for the value of the improvements based on other cost services like a Marshall valuation service, which is a nationally recognized service for identifying costs to replace existing structures. The other cost approach is kind of the same method. We identify the value of the land. In this particular case, we were able to get costs from the area or an engineering firm that was able to identify specific structures that currently exist with this building that would add value to the school district from a standpoint of building structures that's already there. And the third approach is kind of a market approach because schools don't sell every day like you're not going to sell your house and you can have three comps down the street and the appraiser says, yeah, I think your house is worth $100,000. Well, this is not the case. You just don't have a lot of schools that sell on the marketplace. And typically if they do, they're used for some other purpose or being converted for some other purpose, like a multifamily, or going to be torn down and used for some kind of business development. And you just don't see, schools sell every day. If we look on page 2, I don't know, I think everybody here has had a copy of the report or currently has a copy of the report. Mm-hmm. Just to recap, I just want to kind of give you an overview, just kind of an executive summary, maybe not so much for you, but maybe the people in the general public, that the acreage, we're dealing with about 126 acres of land. That's a lot of land. And it's currently zoned general business, which means there's a lot of different commercial development that can go into place here. We're assuming that the property is going to be rezoned as public use for use as a school. And so therefore, a lot of the comps that we use, we try to identify specifically land comps that were purchased for that same purpose, for public use. And maybe I'll just go right into some of the report. Again, let's deal first of all with the land value, which I believe starts on page. And tell me if you guys don't want to go into the detail, because I certainly can. I can certainly skim over a lot of this information. But if we start on page 40, we did identify four parcels of land that actually were for public use, and basically we're looking for larger parcels of land. We found a parcel of land in Rosemont, Minnesota that was purchased by University of Minnesota, which is going to be used for public school. It's going to be a research school. We also found a property in Maple Grove that actually was a future expansion of a school. And we found a parcel of land not too far from here in Afton, right across the bridge. It was approximately 37 acres. And we just had a recent sale right here in Hudson, right on Hanley Road by a company, I think it was U-Haul. Uline, I'm sorry. It was a nice big size parcel, 64 acres. Personally, I didn't think it would sell for that much, but it's an actual arm's length transaction, and it did sell just in November, I believe. In that particular case, that property, I believe, was zoned B2. Same as the property that we're appraising, but I understand that they have to get some rezoning done because they have to get rezoned as an industrial parcel because of the type of business that they're in. So first of all, again, we have to identify kind of the value of the land, and we could go into a lot of specifics. We've identified in the report some of the comps we've used, when they were sold, the size, who the grantor and the grantee were. And after identifying some comps that we would like to use in our analysis, we make adjustments to those comps against the subject property for size, accessibility, zoning, things like that. Bottom line, we've come up with a value of approximately $7 million for the land as vacant. And that's kind of our starting point from the valuation. First of all, we need to determine what is the highest and best use. There could be a lot of different uses for this, but it's a large parcel of land. Unless you have some developer come in there and thinks down the road that he could put a lot of retail, commercial type developments in there. But this is a large parcel of land. And at least under the comps that we use for public use, we feel the value about $7 million is very close to what we think the market should be. Now, once we've identified the land valuation, we go into the different approaches to value. And I indicated, first of all, that there's the cost approach, which is starts on page 51, which is, again, using a national recognized cost service. And what we've done, we have the value of the land, and we put in site improvements. We made an estimate of approximately $600,000 in site improvements. And then we've identified, at least through the engineering report that we were supplied, that there's approximately 90,000 square feet of the building that currently can be used for expansion of the site, which is huge. I mean, it's typically you have to, if you had to demo that thing, I mean, it would be sad to see a structure and all the time and expense that went into that building not to at least hold some of that value there, or at least use some of that structure. Again, this doesn't really, the first approach doesn't use the engineering cost, but we use the National Cost Service, and we come up with a value of approximately $16,900,000. We looked at the structure. It has an economic life of about 50 years. We say it's got an effective life of about 20 years. Again, just looking at the 90,000 square feet, meaning that there's been some use. There's been some deterioration, physical depreciation in the existing structure. The second approach is kind of the same thing. We start off with the land valuation, and then we use the engineering report that was supplied to us, and we identify, even just from the engineering report, we see that they use 90,000 square foot of usable square footage that they can use for future expansion. They've actually given us a low value of $4.5 million to as high as $6.7 million of actual structural costs that they can use for the expansion, which would not have to be expended, which is, I think, a plus for the school district. They've also identified some other typical utility type things that you would have to incur if you were going to put in new construction. And I think you have to realize that we're dealing with a project or a piece of land that really does have a lot of things that are already there that you don't have to incur versus having a piece of raw land. It's amazing how much cost, or not only physical hard costs, but soft costs like engineers, architects, designers. I mean, it can run into a lot of money. And what I wanted to identify, at least these engineers have identified, that there's about $1.2 million in utility costs that they would not have to incur. I mean, this is only at 50% of what they feel the value really would be. So you're looking at about $2.5 million of additional savings that you would have by having these improvements already on the site. Also, you have an asphalt and curb work. You have some existing landscaping. Some of the things that we didn't even address, which I think could add even more value to the site, and I'm not here, that was not part of our scope, was the fact that we have, let's see, just hold on here just a second. Page 4. The electrical. Everybody knows if you've had an electrician, even just to go to your home, how expensive that is, but imagine how the cost it would be just to bring that type of power into this site. Well, these are things that you do not have to incur. I mean, you're going to have some additional cost for conversion, but that's a huge savings. Also, the access, the highway, the overpass. The way I look at it as a taxpayer, is that the taxpayers have already spent that money. They don't have to do it again. I mean, just the access points in the highway and the boulevard, the nice boulevard they have out there, it's already there for a school to bring that in and to, or have that re-engineered just so they can bring in school buses and the general public for dropping their kids off is a huge savings. I mean, I don't even know how you, well, I suppose you could, but it would be difficult to really look at the intangible, including the tangible value that would be assigned to something that's already there. Again, I also mentioned engineering costs. Just the excavating alone on that site would, you're looking at 126 acres. That's a huge dollar savings. Again, I would say realistically maybe preliminary cost savings would be the $2 to $3 million that weren't even identified in our appraisal. I think we had, there was at least, if you were just to excavate the parking lot, it would be about $2 million. And that again, excavating base course, just to get that site ready is a huge savings. So what I've done here on the second approach is we looked at the land value, which we said is approximately $70 million, and now we've added at least the cost savings as identified by the engineering costs of about, let's say, another $6 million or $7 million, and our value is very close to the ones that we came up with the Marshall Valuation Service, which was about 16. So we're talking about $14 or $15 million just from that standpoint. And again, this particular engineering study does not identify some of the other costs that would be saved. Like I said, the engineering costs, the electrical, the engineering, all the soft costs that you'd have to incur. The third approach is the market approach. Again, like I said, it's difficult at best to try to find comps of other schools that have occurred, at least in this marketplace, or for any marketplace for that matter. But we wanted to see if we could identify some other schools that have actually sold, and we did find some, and we try to look at it. Let's use this as a test check, and say, okay, we know what the land value is, and what are some of the costs on a per square foot basis of actual schools that have incurred. And I think we have that on page 55. A huge range. We have one school in Minneapolis sold for $67 a square foot, another one in Brooklyn Park at $102 a square foot, and then we had one in Blaine at $222 a square foot. We ended up with an estimate after our adjustments of about $184 a square foot. Using that with the value of the land, we come up with a value of approximately $16,500,000, which ironically comes in pretty close to the other methods of valuation that we used. Overall, we're dealing with a large parcel of land, 126 acres. What the school district does with it is obviously up to school district, but there's a lot of potential there. I mean, in my mind, you might have some potential extra land. I'm not sure if that's going to come into play, but at least based on the information that we received, the market data, the cost data, the engineering costs that we received, we think a conservative estimate of value, at least with the existing structure there, is approximately $16 million.
Are there questions from the board?
Madam President,
Lynn.
Does your appraisal take into consideration the usable acreage or just total acreage?
We're looking at it as a whole. Because of the size of the property and the scope of our appraisal, we looked at as the parcel as a whole. We're not sure what. Well, some of the things we did consider is the pond, and I think that was brought out in the engineering report. It's the fact that if you had to have a retention pond, that's already in place. It's not so much the cost to put the retention pond in; it's usually the engineering cost to design a pond for a parcel of this size, and that's really where the cost savings come into play.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Pat?
Okay. as I read through this whole thing this last weekend, there was a few wording that got in place, but I think the words was saying with the improvements. And I asked the question of our staff, is that improvements that we're talking about eventually, or is that then I read it was improvements that are there is what you're talking about, the electricity, the utility, the sewer. That's what that with the improvements. It isn't with future improvements.
Correct.
This,
No,
this
it's
is just
as is.
existing.
Correct.
That's
I think-
what it is.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think you might have been referencing something on page 66,
Right.
something about the current or contingent and limiting conditions.
Right, number 7.
Okay. If you, maybe it's a little difficult, but if it says on all appraisals which are subject to satisfactory completion, this particular point relates to projects that we work on where there's new construction.
So it was generic
Right,
form you were
correct, yes.
using.
So-
Okay, that's
so-
where I just needed to.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm
what-
surprised you actually read that part of the report. Because typically people look at the value and the pictures and go, okay, that's it, put it in the file, ready to go. So I'm happy you read it, and this is great.
Well, good. That's the one thing I wanted to. It was a generic form, and that we didn't put any money into that. This is what it is existing. This is what it's worth, just the way it's standing
Correct.
right now.
Right.
Amazing.
Other questions?
Hi, Madam President.
Mark.
I guess one question for Jeff and Paul. I'm fairly new to the vernacular of real estate appraisal here, but in general, do the cost and market approach yield similar numbers, or just, I mean, in this case, it's obviously they're almost spot on, but are there sometimes disparities in those approaches when you're evaluating
Oh,
property?
yeah, definitely. Cost approach, it all depends on the situation. If you're dealing with typically the cost approach comes in when you're dealing with new construction type things, but what we were able to identify, and that's why the engineering report became so important to us, and we used the Marshal Service as a test check, is that these engineers were able to identify specifically parts of the structure that could be used and not have to be demolished, which is, I think, a bonus to this site. Again, there might be another developer or someone else that says, no, we can't use any of this structure, so therefore we have to demolish it and start from scratch. But I think that's a bonus to somebody that can actually use the structures.
Okay. If they were, wildly disparate, which figure would be, if we were talking about something, 16 and the other one was 20 something, we obviously have a little bit more to talk about. But if that were the case, just in hypothetical, what would be your default, I guess, number then in that case?
Well, that's why appraisers, how do I put this without putting my foot in my mouth?
Sorry, we won't hold you to it.
Yeah, appraisal sometimes is, as some appraisers will tell you, is an art, not so much a science.
Sure.
And you have to base your final opinion based on the information that's presented to you. Sometimes you just know that, and a lot of times we go through the process of using all three approaches to value when looking at a particular property, but we know right offhand, if it's some property that's 120 years old, that we're not going to use the cost approach. It just doesn't apply. So we're going to concentrate more on the market approach or the income approach. And it all depends on the type of property that you're looking at, where you're going to concentrate your efforts. And obviously, because of the land, I mean, the land here is so important, and that's where I think the base starts from, and everything after that is a bonus.
Sure. And just one thing, this is just purely an opinion, a question of your opinion for you gentlemen here. It's sort of my sense that we've got a real opportunity here in the district with the economy and recession, real estate prices, and what. I mean, if you were to, I guess, assess what the real estate market goes in your appraisals over the last 12 months and looking forward, I mean, would you agree with my amateur assessment that this is probably a good time to be buying real estate for this purpose?
Well, it depends on what kind of property you're buying. Right now, the hot market is multifamily. Retail's having a tough time. Housing market is spotty, depending on where you are in the marketplace. So again, it's all based on location. I mean, there's a lot of properties out there, especially residential, that's having a hard time. It's a lot to do with, foreclosed properties, people that were not able to pay their mortgages. But the marketplace is correcting itself, but it'll probably be another 2 years, probably 2014 before that comes back around.
I guess I'm thinking, more specifically, this property, obviously, if not for the school district, would be, commercial development. And I guess as I look forward, it seems that we've, certainly turned a corner, and I guess I don't anticipate any more fire sales in commercial real estate, especially in this area. Comments?
Well, if I had that crystal ball, man, I'd be
sure. Well,
I'd be
none of us would be here,
I'd be
right?
really in demand. This guy's can see the future, but that's one of the things that's difficult about appraising is really not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. Stock market drops tomorrow, value of the dollar drops.
Sure.
It changes everything, but nobody knows. It really is difficult to say here's what's going to happen a year from now. The market is low. One advantage you do have is the interest rates. Interest rates, as indicated by your last speaker, is great, not only for commercial but as well as for residential.
May I make a general comment?
Absolutely.
Maybe just something more in general, working in the commercial real estate in the Twin Cities is, in general, I don't know about Jeffrey, but I've seen a stability back in the marketplace. Those fire sales you talked about are fewer and far between, and there's special cases now where everyone at one point, a couple years ago, was thinking the entire market was like that. In general, across all boards, I've seen a stability in the Twin Cities.
Okay. Good.
And is that going to increase? Maybe.
Yeah,
Will it go down? Maybe. But that's what we're seeing right now.
Okay, good. That's helpful. Thanks, Paul.
Anybody else?
I have another question.
Okay.
So the price that you've come up with for the appraisal, is that a price that possibly a business would pay for that, or a business, or is that higher than a business would pay for that parcel?
Well, we're looking at as is, and I think, as I indicated before, it's kind of not the typical appraisal engagement or typical scope where we're looking at a specific purpose, or at least an existing property that has highest and best use. We know what it is. We know it's retail. We know that it's warehouse. What we've done here is we've used kind of a combination of a couple different scopes of appraisal where we're taking the existing land, we're taking the existing structure that's there. We know what existing structure can be used for the purpose of the school district. So it's more related to use as a school district than it would be for another development. At least that's kind of our scope. We're not here to, at least our engagement was not to say, okay, if you want to turn this into a commercial development, what it would be.
Okay. If the commercial or the business could use the existing of the 90,000 feet, that they could use that, would this then relate to, because a lot of people put that the school should be like a business and, for the land and stuff. I was just wondering, would the, if a business came in, looked at it, saw that, hey, we can use this building, we can remodel this, and we can use the 90,000, would that be about the same amount then or would it be worth more?
It's hard to say. I'm just going to throw my own input here and take it for what it's worth, but from a developer standpoint, you have a lot of land. Okay, from a developer standpoint, I'd probably parcel that off into smaller parcels. And therefore, when you're dealing with smaller parcels, you get higher values. It's kind of a general rule. The higher, the more land you're dealing with, the higher parcel. The more land you have, the less value per acre. The smaller parcels, the more value per acre. So from that standpoint, you have a huge hypothetical as far as how you would parcel that off. Ideally, that's probably what he would do, is parcel that off into different sections and sell those off individually, or maybe even keep some land and develop along that highway where you have the visibility and the good access. I mean,
so then it could possibly be higher for a business than what you've done for the school. So And you said you didn't know what the agreement we had with them.
We just
So-
found out when we walked in the door
So I
today,
think
actually.
we've got a very good, yeah, I think we're quite pleased.
Jeff, I have a few questions for you
Sure.
as well. I want to make sure that I understand the methodology. So essentially, the valuation was done, land as one portion of the evaluation that you did, and then the building separately, yes?
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
the land, when you're doing evaluation, first of all, you have to try to allocate the land as a vacant, and then build off that based on what improvements you have on the site.
And so with the land, you really tried to identify those comparables, and you found the 164-acre parcel here in Hudson that sold that was one of the comparables that you'd looked at. And then you made adjustments based on size, et cetera, to get to the $7 million valuation that you attached to this land parcel, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then on the building side, tell me again, the Marshall Valuation Service, that's a third-party valuation service that you can use to try and come up with a value for an existing structure?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I feel like I'm leading the witness, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you described in your process. And then what you did when you, after having used that Marshall Valuation Service, and I'm looking on page 51, I think it is, in your report, and it's a nice summary of the overall valuation work using this Marshall Valuation Service. But it does come down to the $16.9 million that is in your executive summary. So what I see on here is you have an estimated building value as if it were new, and then you reduce that value for assumed depreciation over the course of the last 20 years, getting to a depreciated value of the building improvements of about $9.2 million, and that is on that Marshall Valuation Service, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then what you said also is then you looked at that in relationship to the estimated cost that the engineering service had done and the architects had done to see, are those two numbers within a close proximity of one another as a way to validate that this feels like the right number to attach as a value to the building? Did I misunderstand that?
No, hopefully, well, I'm sorry I didn't describe that or point that out, that the engineering cost really does mirror that Marshall Valuation Service. Again, you have the highs and lows, but you've got at least $1.2 million just in utilities alone.
But the engineering study that you looked at, or the engineering and the architect's information that you looked at, is an independent piece of work from this Marshall Valuation Service.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
That's what I was trying to understand.
No, and that's why I said there's two methods that we used. One was Marshall. One was saying let's use independent engineering costs that we were able to get and to kind of validate.
Great. Last question that I have then is, in this, in the site improvement number, you have $615,000. Can you talk a little bit about what you have assumed is in that bucket of site improvement costs?
Be primarily site improvements would include things like paving, things like that.
Does it
Site
include
landscaping.
the ramps off the 4-lane road? That okay?
No.
So there is essentially potentially incremental value that has not been captured in the report that as you've described it here.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for the report, gentlemen.
Great. Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Okay. Digital Learning Day in Hudson Schools. Sandy?
I know, it's many questions. That was a very long and detailed report.
Digital Learning Day is not only a state event, a Hudson event, but a national event. And Diane, if you go to the next slide, our state superintendent, Tony Evers, proclaimed February 1st as Digital Learning Day in Wisconsin. And the observance is part of a first ever national effort. Digital learning is any instructional practice that is effectively using technology to strengthen the student learning experience. The state superintendent and others at the Department of Public Instruction led a cooperative effort with PK-12 schools, higher education institutions, and education agencies to organize the day. Educators were encouraged to plan events in their schools and communities and then share those ideas with the rest of the state via a collaborative web page specially created for Wisconsin Digital Learning Day. And with me this evening, we have two of our teachers from EP Rock, Beth Erlenborn and Dan Baumgartner, and they'll talk in just a little bit about their special project. And then our district IT coordinator, Nancy Toll, will also be presenting. All right. Next slide. We thought we would start off with just some of the events that happened in the district. And so first of all of the media specialists in the district introduced Destiny Online. And Destiny is what we use for, in essence, our process and our software for checking books in and out of our libraries. And so we've added a new piece. So now students and teachers can look up books, put books on hold, and even download and read ebooks through the district library checkout system, which is available online with links on each of our building websites. So that was showcased on our district day. And now in addition, we'd like to showcase each of our schools and some of the exciting things they use technology in the classrooms. So first, Diane. First, we have little Preston, who's following along in a book at Hudson Prairie while listening to the story being read on an iPod Nano in the school. Next, we have Lucas, a Hudson Prairie first grader, who uses an iPad to listen to an ebook. Next, we have Lauren and Sierra and Sam in Brian Burbach's fifth grade class at North Hudson Elementary using iPods as well, and they're also listening to their books as they read. And then next we have Heidi and Cole using digital cameras to take pictures at Rivercrest Elementary. And you might recall that we had a presentation regarding the global experience here at Rivercrest. And so this is part of that effort. In Katie Van Ness's class, they're using those pictures to create a podcast that is going to be titled A Tour of Rivercrest. And that'll become part of their Global Buddies project with Jakarta, Indonesia. And then next we're going to showcase, we have what we call mobile laptops, or COWs, or computers on wheels, and our fifth graders are using those mobile laptops to research. They do a state report, and you can see here that Nathan, Wyatt, Eli, and Quinn, Kelly, and Connor are all hard at work working on their brochures of their state reports. Next, we're going to then move into, then we also have North Hudson. Oh, we lost a picture. But we also have students using technology even in the special needs rooms with assistive technologies. And North Hudson is one of the schools that highlights those digital opportunities as well. Then we'll go to EP Rock, and I won't say a lot here, but just know that this project was submitted at the state level and selected as a highlight of the state as far as a collaborative project. And so I'm going to let Beth and Dan take it away.
Well, one of the things I do as a media specialist is I try to find interesting ways to connect my topics with kids. And two topics that I was kind of struggling with were file management and copyright. They're both kind of, it's not always that exciting to move a file around, and then I have to go check them all, and there's nothing really exciting there. So I was thinking, well, it would be really cool if I could get them to make a file, maybe a sound file, and then when they're moving it around and putting it on the web somewhere, it would be interesting for us to go hear it. And when I teach copyright, I kind of always did it from the negative perspective. Don't take a Taylor Swift song and share it with 20 friends. And little Johnny in the front row will say, but I know how to do that. It's really easy. I know, but that doesn't mean it's right. And so I would try to get them to imagine what it would feel like if you wrote a song. And then I was thinking, what if I could get them to actually write a song? And so I came to Mr. Baumgartner and said, by the time the kids get into fifth grade, can they write music? Because if they can, I think I have a really fun project idea.
Good evening. So here, this goes back to music again. We started with some music, and now we can kind of close with some as well. But when Beth had the idea about actually creating their own songs, that's something that I have my fifth graders do a lot of. But I loved the idea of actually getting it to be a sound piece rather than just something on a piece of paper. So what you have up here is just the template that Allison used. She was one of the students that was actually featured on Digital Learning Day. She actually went to a keyboard and played this on the webinar all around the state of Wisconsin. But I started with some very basic elements and said, come up with a rhythm pattern that goes along with some of the rhythms that you know. And then from there, they had to come up with the sounds themselves, and I try to make it as simple as possible. Do you have step 2 on there, Diana? Instead of actually trying to figure out music on a staff, I do a lot using what we call pentatonic scale. And all this kind of goes also back to the fact that in 2004, part of our curriculum plan was to put keyboards in all the elementary schools. And so these 5th graders have been using keyboards since they were in kindergarten. And so it wasn't that big of a step for them to actually use a keyboard to record their project. And so if you notice, underneath the rhythms, there's not so much black and white notes, just pitch ideas. So if you can think of a piano, it has black keys, and you have do, re, mi, so, and la on the black keys. And so we did in class have them practice on the keyboards how to do basic composition using black keys. And then what they were able to do was not just have it in this format, but actually go to Beth and make a recording then. Our parent group was kind enough to actually add a few more keyboards that were now permanently placed as part of the library, actually. So we've been really doing some fun collaborating where I would have them work on the song in music time, and then 2 or 3 at a time to say, okay, now I'll go over to the recording studio, quote unquote, and actually record their piece. And so that's what Beth submitted for Digital Learning Day, and that's kind of what was featured as the digital part of that, is making it into an MP3 file that then, do you want to talk about the whole blogging piece or any of that?
Yeah, after, do you want to play the song and then I'll do that?
Oh, we actually have a composition to play. Sure. If you go to the next slide, Diane, you can see the... So there's the sound. Does it have the...
That's about it.
Oh, okay, okay. But you can, when they record this, you can actually do a program called, another digital program called Audacity.
Yep.
And then they see it that way. It's not so much, it's a different way of notating. It's the sound file, basically. And then that turns into the management part of the project.
Sure. So what I did then, after they recorded their songs, the piece that I was kind of interested in was getting them to then say we can export that into an MP3 file, and then I showed them how to put that on their blogs, and so anyone in the school district could hear them. So, and now we'll do our last slide. So then when Digital Learning Day came about, and we figured out that other people might want to hear these, we had Nancy help us put these out on our school website so that anyone can go out there and hear any of the 80 songs that are there. So when we did the project, I kind of expected certain things, that the kids would be successful, but what I didn't expect was that now they're still wanting to do this. And so the keyboards are in the library. They have headphones on when they're playing it, so that's how the two can kind of fit together. So while I'm there helping them with a variety of other getting books and resources and things, there are kids that are coming in on a regular basis still wanting to create music, and they're clustering in little groups, and one guy becomes the engineer and another person, they're like working together. It's been a really fun experience, and I know we're going to keep doing more of these kinds of things because the kids really like it. So that was our day.
I know it's been a long evening, but happy to report that Beth and I are also going to be doing a 75-minute workshop down in River Falls for the what, why, and how of successful music education. To go a little bit deeper than the 6 minutes that we had in the webinar for music educators that are interested in how to do this. So,
that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Then if we want to move on and talk a little bit about our secondary schools too, because there's a lot going on with technology there also. Video conferencing tools are being used at all levels where students get a chance to communicate with others around the world. So in this particular slide, you see middle school students that were Skyping with an author as part of their language arts classes. And then students at the middle school are also using a program called VoiceThread. It's a Web 2.0 tool that allows students to post their work online. It can be an audio file, video file, a graphic. In this particular slide, it's a group project on China. And then you can see the little icons on the sides where other students then can give peer reviews and respond and critique the work that the students have done. And throughout K-12, teachers are incorporating technology standards into the curriculum, and the major base comes from the media specialist instruction at the elementary levels, and then the computer exploratory classes for 6th and 7th graders that you see here. Yeah. At the high school level, they use a multitude of technologies for a wide range of uses, from students communicating with others around the world, and this happens to be one of our foreign exchange students who gets a chance to Skype with family back home every chance he can get there, and has passed those skills on to a lot of other kids at the school too. And they also are participating in online classes that expand their curriculum offerings beyond what we can offer in the typical setting. So here you see a student working on a Japanese 2 class. And we also have students now using cell phones as student response tools, as in Mr. Bublis' class, where they're interacting with digital polls with their cell phones. And incorporating technology into presentations, as these girls are using the smart boards in the classes for presentations that they created. All right. The use of technology in the district is closely guided by curriculum needs and the district media technology plan. And the state required plan for 2012-15 will be brought to the board later this spring for review and approval. We're excited about the tools that lie ahead for our students and staff to use for their continued learning.
No, thank you very much.
Awesome.
All right, Nancy, recognition of our retirees.
Okay. Later in the agenda, under personnel, the board will approve 3 teacher retirements. They and their service merit special attention. Over the past 7 years, there have been an average of 9 teacher retirements per year. There was a high of 17 teacher retirements in 2005-06 and a previous low of 3 teacher retirements in 2008-09. Just some history for you. Becky Fowler, media specialist at Rivercrest Elementary, is retiring after 16 years serving Hudson students. And during this time, she has also served as a media specialist at Holton and Willow River, so 3 of our 6 elementary schools. Rick Schultz, tech ed teacher at the Hudson Middle School, will also be retiring after 16 years. In recent years, Rick became a Project Lead the Way certified teacher. He was also an early and longtime coach for the district's adapted floor hockey athletic program. And now a drum roll, a blowing of the horns, and a playing of the keys for Carl Meinke. Yeah, instrumental music teacher at the middle school. He's retiring after 37 years of teaching in the Hudson School District. These 3 educators have together taught and otherwise touched the lives of several thousand Hudson students. And teaching has been, for each of them, so much more than a job. So thank you, Becky, Rick, and Carl.
That's great. Thanks, Nancy. How about a round of applause for some amazing... All right. The next report is one that I would like to share with the board members about a tour that I did of the Hudson High School and the middle school about 2 weeks ago. I requested time to go and visit each of those 2 schools during the school day, and that was really part of me putting myself back in those schools during the day when it's full of students, as a reminder as we move forward on the referendum for the land purchase at St. Croix Meadows. And so what I'd like to do, and Diane, do you have the slide up? There's a couple of pictures, I think. All right. How is it? Okay. I think the board members, you can see the pictures in your packets. So I did it because it's been a while since I've been in the schools during the school day. And what I'd like to share are just some observations that I made. Oh, now the picture, that's a high school one? The middle high one is below that. And what I'd like to do is start with the high school. So I spent about an hour in each of the two facilities. In the high school, here are the things that I observed. Classrooms, literally we walked into classrooms both on the west side and the east side, and many of them literally jammed wall to wall with students. In some cases, so full of students at desks that you could hardly open the door. It was interesting. And, we manage our student guidelines within we manage the class sizes within our board guidelines, but still the spaces are quite small in certain areas. Classrooms that housed both students and supplies, creating limited floor space for movement and group activities. There simply was no other place to put supplies. Science classrooms where the instructors are making monumental modifications to experiments because the classrooms are both small and inadequately equipped to do more typical experiments. As an example, we visited the classroom of Patty Mueller, who identified that in many of the classrooms, the science rooms in particular, we lack eye wash stations and venting hoods, which prohibit them from doing experiments that you would otherwise do. So she has modifications that she makes with portable or battery-operated items, but it really does limit the capacity of what she's able to do with those students. A media center that is a fraction of the size necessary for our student body. Multiple teachers conducting study halls in the common areas. Hallways jammed with backpacks as students make use of the cafeteria and other common spaces, literally backpacks all along the wall. And an observation of a physical education teacher wheeling equipment through the already crowded hallways. If you can imagine wheeling equipment through these hallways because they had to take the racket sport class equipment from one end of the building to the other end of the building where there was space available. So it was an eye-opening hour. And that doesn't really even scratch the surface, but it gives you a sense for it. Hopefully. In the middle high school, the hallways are more gracious, so it can be less obvious, but the things that I noticed, again, a media center that is clearly undersized for the student body, teachers on carts that would roll into open classrooms while that class teachers' students were at the lunchroom. So we watched the sixth graders go to lunch, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but we watched the sixth graders go to lunch, and literally when the sixth graders go to lunch, then you've got teachers on carts wheeling into those open spaces so they have a space to teach the class that they're assigned to during that period of time. It is a long trek for 1,290 students from the middle school through Hudson Prairie to the health classrooms, which, if I remember right, are located 3 classrooms in a clustered pod, but they're just to the north of the main Prairie entrance. And I'm looking at Susie, and that she's nodding her head, so that is right. So, it's not like it's just inside the walls of Prairie. They're making a hike past the media center to get to the space where the health classrooms are. Over 400 sixth graders racing out of their house to get in line for lunch, which is a very discrete period of time. That was fascinating to watch. 400 sixth graders standing in line waiting for their pizza for lunch. And virtually all of them wanted pizza. And really, this is off the record, but kudos to the folks who work in the kitchen at the middle high school. I cannot even tell you how efficient and how fast these people moved to serve that many students in such a short period of time. And classroom supplies that were stored literally everywhere because there is no storage space, no closet space for them to get things out of the way. So really it was a healthy and a helpful thing to go and visit during the day and watch really what it looks like when the buildings are full of students. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Barb.
All right, we are at that point of the agenda for citizens' request to speak. We have one, but I know it's under the topics for action, so I think for Phil Myers, I'm going to wait until we do the report, and then I'll invite you, Phil, to come forward and address the board before we take action. And with that, we are in the topics for action section of the agenda, and so we will move Nancy to the hearing on Phil Myers and Jamie Summers Myers' petition to detach property.
Okay, Philip Myers and Jamie Summers Myers, residents of the Somerset School District, have applied to have their property detached from the Somerset School District and attached to the Hudson School District. And I'll refer board members to the property map, which is up on the board and on your laptops as well. The Hudson School District boundaries are shown in light green. The Somerset School District boundaries land shown in orange stripes. You can see, all the irregularity associated with our boundary and theirs up in that part of our district. The property in question that is the subject of the petition is shown in pink. And we show also another Hudson property that is alongside the same road. The property in pink, again, the property that's being petitioned, is contiguous to our boundary in the east. The eastern property is not developed, but could be developed, is not a conservancy, and could be developed. We don't have students in that area yet, nor buses going up there, but there's potential for that.
And Nancy, could I just interrupt? Are you referring to
the east of the pink?
The rectangle to the east of the subject property?
Yes.
That's
That
okay.
is Hudson District?
Mm-hmm. That's yes. Everything in green is the Hudson district.
It looks yellow.
Yellow.
Yellow,
Okay.
honey.
All right. Yellow.
With yellow
Okay.
stripes. The yellow stripes?
We'll call it yellow from now on. No wonder everybody's confused, huh?
I got orange.
Okay.
It's here, that's Somerset District.
Okay. So the property, again, that is petitioned is accessible only by a Hudson bus driving into the Somerset School District territory. So it's kind of a different scenario than some of the properties that have come before you in the past. And right now, we do not have a bus going onto that road that comes off from County Road E, and then it goes up and loops around and comes back down to County Road E. Somerset, and there are no children attending the Hudson schools from the property that is part of the Hudson School District, that little yellow piece.
So say that again, Nancy, I missed that.
Yeah, you can see on the same road.
I see that.
There is a little square there on the the western side of that road.
Yes.
That is labeled Hudson, and it's in yellow. That is a Hudson School District property. How it got there, we don't know. We don't know, but you do see in different places of our boundaries, you do see these little, what they call islands. And that is clearly just an island. It's a single property, but there are no children attending the Hudson schools at this time. Could there be in the future? Certainly. And if there were, we would be compelled to bus up there, pick up those children, and bring them to school. But right now, we do not have a bus going up in there. In contrast, the Somerset buses do pick up and deliver to children approximately to 5 homes on that road. The property is valued at approximately $400,000. The Myers have 2 children currently open enrolled into Hudson, attending Holton Elementary School. One of the children will be a 6th grader next year, a middle school candidate. and subject to our open enrollment process. In contrast to previous petitions, the administration will not be providing a recommendation to the board for either approval or denial, but instead we will outline some pros and some cons, because there are pros and cons to this particular petition. It's not as clear as some of the other petitions that have come before us. Leaning in the direction of approving the petition would be, one, the property value and the additional tax base for the district. And number two, the children already attend Hudson Elementary School where space is available. They're already counted in our numbers. They're already in place. And under open enrollment. Under open enrollment, 2 children. Mm-hmm. The leaning in the direction of denial would be, one, the current access road is internal to the Somerset School District. We have to drive in and out of, literally, another school district. However, if the Hudson School District property that's on the same road were to request school registration, our bus would be compelled to travel that road, even though we would be going into the property of another school district. The second reason that you might lean in the direction of denial would be our middle school is seriously over capacity. The high school is approaching capacity. Secondary solution several years away. It's a discretionary decision to increase our resident student enrollment. So again, leaning in the direction of additional tax base, the fact that children are already here under open enrollment. The other side of it is at least the temporary, the short term, going into and through another school district's territory, and our space concerns, our enrollment concerns. The process, just to remind you, both the Hudson and the Somerset boards must approve the petition in order for it to happen. I met the family just before the meeting tonight, and they tell me that the Somerset board will be meeting this week. If one or both deny their petition, then they have the right to appeal to the state.
All right, with that, I think I would invite Phil Myers to come up and address the board. And if you can come right up to the microphone, Mr. Myers, and state your name and your address, please, and then feel free to make your comments.
Phil Myers, 452 Highland View, Holton, St. Joseph Township.
Okay.
We just want to impress upon you, this is not a decision we've made lightly. We are currently in the schools, and it's our strong preference. Nancy mentioned the island residence that's in our neighborhood, so there was a precedent set, and no one knows why. To me, the bigger question is the area to the north is also a big island within Somerset. And for whatever reason, even though we are really members of the Hudson community, our neighborhood is carved out into Somerset. So ask you to consider that as you consider this. As far as busing is not a big deal for us. We're willing to forego the busing if that's an option. And as far as the enrollment, we understand the enrollment situation, but as she also stated, our children are in the numbers that are currently accounted for on your spreadsheet. So with that, that's all I have. If there are any questions for me, or
question regarding the Hudson property that Mr. Myers spoke of north of that, there are currently, I'm assuming, other children from Hudson that are attending school now in that northern plot, and our buses are running up to those points.
I'm actually not sure of that. I'm not absolutely 100% sure of that.
we
Nancy,
have another
we've got-
map that shows all the properties up there.
Nancy, it doesn't show on that map, but we have transportation running south, just south of that circle, correct?
Just, well, yes, the property in question, yes. But I think they're referring, Tim, to the property to the Hudson just north of that road.
Okay.
But there aren't any
Mhm.
roads there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For certain, I will say though, for certain, just south off E, so right at the very end of the road where it intersects with E, there's a development there, and we have buses right there. That would be the closest buses. They go right past E. They just don't. Yeah, E is the one coming. Yeah, it's coming down there. Yeah, and we just. Yep, exactly. And there are children there, and that would be very close to the entry to that road.
That'd be great.
That yellow one on that side, is that developed at all? Right behind there?
No, to the right it's not.
Not yet, but
no.
it could be?
Yeah.
And it'll be Hudson?
Yes, it is
It'll be
Hudson. It is Hudson.
Nancy.
So if that bridge goes through, that could be all sold up and be.
So this whole yellow, see, that's all Hudson to the north. It's a rather large. Very Hudson north.
Actually, I'm going to pause the board just for a moment and say thank you, Jamie and Phil. And my belief is that the questions will largely be for Nancy or the other administrators. But please feel free to take a seat, and we'll continue to deliberate on this issue.
Yeah.
All right. Are there specific questions for Nancy?
Madam President, just a question. Can we get a little more specifics on the transportation side? Are we talking, half a mile, 2 miles out of the way?
The actual mileage, the bus company, I had them go up there. It's about 2 miles total. So it's 2 miles in from E and then all the way around the circle.
Okay.
And we
so that's
currently
an
don't
addition.
have any students, even with that one square that's.
No, we
so
currently do not. They measured the mileage. They measured the amount of time. It's about 2 miles around. It's about a 5-minute addition. No problem at all with elementary busing. Secondary busing is tight. But it wouldn't be the only reason that we might need to add a route next year to the secondary busing for that part of our district.
Other questions for Nancy? Lynn?
Madam President. Nancy, I think, if I recall correctly, the normal, or what we had seen previously in other annexations or requests for annexations, is that the district that they were trying to be annexed into most frequently permitted them to come in, and the district that they would be annexing from normally voted no. Is that, do I recall that
Generally
correctly?
so, especially if contiguous, rather than creating another island. And also, in some cases, we have considered buses going right by. And we do have a bus going within that 2-mile loop of the property. And then we do have the potential for development to the east in the future.
Madam
Thank you.
President, Nancy, is that a viable option to waive, as Mr. Myers had suggested, they don't need the busing, that would be something. I know that there's a requirement that we have to provide busing for all.
Well, there is a requirement that we have to provide busing, and state law and district policy would make their children eligible for the busing. But they, of course, wouldn't need to participate. Some parents don't.
So would that mean then that we could forego that route by the Myers home, or you have to continue that route?
Yeah. See, I bring it up only because I know that the secondary route, when you Holton Elementary is very close within this particular area, so that's not a problem. There's space on the bus. It doesn't take much time to get to Holton. Middle school and high school, it takes a little bit more time to get from the north of our property to those locations. And so, and we have been somewhat challenged, still within guidelines this year. But if we were to grow, so I don't want you to think that it's just solely because of this request that we would add a bus route. we're very close to adding a bus route anyway. Okay?
You know, we're talking about the Myers right now, but once the board chooses to approve this piece of property coming into the district, and should the other district do the same thing, or if there's an appeal and it's approved in that direction, the property stays within the district. And so people move, and residents of that property change. And so although we're spending quite a bit of time on busing, that could change in the future.
Yeah,
so we need to
yeah.
look at it actually beyond that, because it's the property itself, and the residents can change.
Yes, yeah.
Is there currently a house, Nancy, I guess, on this other
Yes,
little island?
there is.
There is, just no Hudson students there. Just-
That are not enrolled, no.
There aren't any that, okay, and there are other houses along here too.
Yes, there are, and the Somerset
And
bus.
Somerset comes in.
Yeah, Somerset picks them up and they go to school in Somerset.
Are there other questions? All right. So, board members, we find ourselves in an interesting position where the district or the administrative team is not making a recommendation. So, is there a board member who would like to make a motion to approve or deny attaching this property to the Hudson School District and detaching from the Somerset School District?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to attach the Myers property to the Hudson School District.
All right. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Motion by Lynn, second by Tom. Is there any more discussion?
Madam President, I just want to give you my logic behind why I'm choosing to do this. One of the criteria that I find compelling in these reasons are it's attached to a large parcel that could be developed. It's contiguous to existing property in the district. One of the things that I look at when we looked at open enrollment, and one of the things that is kind of my hot button on open enrollment, is when we have families that are existing in the district, keeping them in the district is important, and not breaking up families, and having families that have elementary students that are in the Hudson School District because they help balance an enrollment problem that we have at one of our schools, and then their older siblings are not allowed in the middle school or high school. So
Okay.
that's my reasons behind my...
All right, so we have a motion that has been seconded. If there is no more discussion, all those in favor of attaching this property to the Hudson School District, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, let's see. We are now moving on to the next topic for action, which is the WCEA Hudson Teachers 2011-12 Collective Bargaining Agreement. Nancy.
The collective bargaining agreement proposed for settlement this evening is like no other in the past. The previous agreement was 40 pages in length, and the one before you tonight is 2 pages in length. This reflects a change in the law, which provides that the only subject of bargaining can be base wages. Other provisions of the previous agreement have been adopted in large part by the board through the employee handbook. With that said, the teachers have voted to approve, and the administration is recommending that the board ratify this 2011-2012 agreement. This agreement represents a 1.48% increase in base wages. And since there is no longer a salary grid with placement of teachers according to years of local experience, this agreement would provide an equal 1.48% increase in the current individual base wage for each teacher, retroactive to the beginning of the present school year. We view this as a modest cost of living increase, and also what we believe the district can afford at this time. And we do feel that this is necessary in order for the district to remain competitive in its recruitment and retention of our teachers.
Are there questions for Nancy? None? Just not really a question, Nancy, but just an observation. So this agreement that the board is being asked to approve tonight has already been approved by the WCEA.
Yes, it has, by WCEA, the executive board there, and then also by a vote of the teachers, of the Hudson teachers, yes. Vote
Great.
of the Hudson teachers.
Thank you. All right, so is there a board member who would like to make a motion approving this agreement?
Madam President, I would move the approval of the collective bargaining agreement for 2011-12 as presented.
Motion by Tom, second by Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda, 2011-12 employee salary and wage increase.
Okay. And this particular recommendation does connect to the teachers' compensation as well. So similarly, the district needs to remain competitive in the recruitment and maintenance of employment of its support employees, all classifications of our support employees, coordinators, supervisors, one administrator, school psychologists, school social worker, and school counselors. Therefore, the administration is also recommending for these employees a 1.48% increase in base wages and salaries for 2011-12, retroactive to the beginning of the current fiscal year. And this recommended increase would only apply to those employees currently affected by the change in the law related to the Wisconsin retirement system. That's an important additional feature for this population of employees. That's why I say one administrator, because there is currently one administrator affected by the change in the law related to the Wisconsin retirement system. Eventually, all employees, all coordinators, supervisors, all employees of the district will be, and all administrators will be affected by the Wisconsin retirement system as individual contracts expire. And so there's several classifications included here. Again, all of our support employees, which examples would be our custodians, our secretarial employees, school-age care, nutritional services, our educational assistants, media assistants. I might be forgetting a group or two, but we mean all of our classifications of support employees, and coordinators, supervisors, and school psychologists, school social workers, school counselors. Not part of the teachers' agreement. Those certified employees are not part of the teachers' agreement.
Nancy, just a clarification.
Yeah.
Do we have any part-time support employees because of the, minimal part-time that they don't qualify for the WRS?
We do.
Yes, we would
Yeah,
have some
sure.
that are working under those minimum hours.
And I'm assuming maybe this motion should include them as well. And the way it's written, it does not.
I would say that would be the intent, to include
is
all
our
of those
intent, yeah.
classifications.
I thought it was, and I
Leave
just
it-
wanted
yeah,
to think the
yeah.
wording needs to just
Yes.
a modification.
That would be correct. Yep.
Okay. So we would add, and those part-time support employees that do not qualify for the Wisconsin retirement system. I'm glad you caught that, Mary. Yeah, I know.
All right, are there questions for Nancy on this recommendation? No? All right. Someone willing to make a motion?
Madam President, I move to provide a 1.48% increase in hourly wages and salaries of support employees in all classifications, coordinators, supervisors, one administrator, school psychologist, school social worker, and school counselors, and part-time support employees.
Yes.
for 2011-2012, retroactive to beginning the current fiscal year, with the understanding that this increase would apply only to those employees currently affected by the change in the law related to the Wisconsin retirement system.
Motion by Mark.
Just a clarification on the motion, because of how the support employees were added in, and it would be those who are not under the Wisconsin retirement system. If we added those words, then it would have that intent.
Okay. Understood.
Friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
So motion by Mark.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Madam President, who seconded the motion?
Dan. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's see. Next item, land purchase, April 3rd, referendum, St. Croix Meadows Purchase Agreement Amendment. Tim.
Well, so in front of you, you should have the amendment to the commercial purchase agreement, and I'm going to walk you through the bottom 4 paragraphs that are numbered 1 through 4. This agreement has also been submitted to the ownership of St. Croix Meadows, so they're in receipt of that, and we're just awaiting their signatures as well. So the first paragraph has to do with extending a timeline for zoning, and that would be we will have until April 30th, 2012 to satisfy the contingencies for zoning. The second paragraph, paragraph number 2, deals with closing, and that's also extending the closing date, of course, because of the zoning issues and working through the zoning process. We need to extend the closing date as well. So that date is extended to, and that should occur, again, as the language states, on or before June 29th, 2012, or within 60 days of the satisfaction of the last contingency requirement. So that is a flexible date. Paragraph number 3 is dealing with the Alta survey, and that's stating we have until March 9th, 2012 to complete that survey. That survey has been in progress, and as I understand it, they are getting close to completing that. It's a fairly involved piece. The dog track property is many parcels, and so it's a complex process. We also, as a part of that paragraph, we also have, it also extends the buyer's time for remaining title objection. So once we get the Alta survey, if there are any title objections that we would object to, we have until March 16th. So it extends that deadline for us as well. And then item number 4, all the remaining terms of the commercial purchase agreement remain as originally agreed upon. Any questions?
Go ahead, Dan.
Madam President, Tim, just a quick question on the April 30th date. That seems like a fairly quick turnaround time. I haven't looked at the complete agreement for a while, but is that a pretty realistic?
Right, you're referring to paragraph 1, right. April 30th. Yep. That's subject, it's subject dependent on the city timeline and process.
But given the city's, regularly scheduled meetings and how they do things, is that?
Yes. Right now, I can't guarantee that we wouldn't come back and say we need another extension, because it is somewhat dependent on the city process. Mm-hmm. And we're, again, had Plan Commission meeting last night, and so we're working on that assumption right now. That appears to be a reasonable date for us.
Can I just make a comment to that? Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but our understanding is that the city is scheduling a hearing on the rezoning for, I believe the date is April 9th.
The Common Council has scheduled a hearing for the rezoning, yes, April 9th. Right.
Give you some idea.
Are there other questions for Tim? No? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the amendment to the purchase agreement for the St. Croix Meadows property?
Madam President, I move to approve the amendment to the commercial purchase agreement for the dog track.
All right, motion by Lynn. Is there a second? I second that. Second by Pat. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Handbook provision. Nancy, teacher discipline and support employee discipline.
Okay. If you could put them side by side, it would be helpful, or go back and forth and look at them. The expectations, these are handbook provisions proposed for adoption this evening. The expectations of our employees are similar, whether they're support employees or teachers. We expect all of our employees to perform at high levels and to comply with all of our policies, procedures, rules, and directives. On occasion, there may be misconduct, and it may be necessary for the administration to take action. And when that action is taken, you'll see in these two provisions that the standards differ. Teachers may only be disciplined for cause, which is a more legally rigorous step-by-step consideration. Support employees are at-will employees. However, they may be terminated with or without cause, but such action may not be arbitrary and may not be capricious. So there's two different standards represented in the handbook provisions. The definition of discipline for both teachers and support employees is consistent in these handbook provisions with the definition in the previously board-adopted grievance procedure and must result in adverse employment action in order to be defined as discipline. And examples of that for both teachers and support employees would be a day of suspension without pay. Termination would be an adverse employment action, both of which would be subject to the grievance procedure, and all of our employees, whether support employees or teachers, would have access to the grievance procedure previously adopted by the board. And if you'll recall, in both cases, the board would be the final arbiter of whether or not those standards have been met, whether or not there was cause for the adverse action, disciplinary action for a teacher, or whether or not the action taken was arbitrary or capricious for a support employee. For other actions not defined as discipline through the grievance procedure, both teachers and support employees have other complaint procedures at their disposal currently in a variety of board policies and procedures. We will look toward pulling those policies together and creating a complaint process that is clear and understandable to our employees. But for now, they can access that through existing policies and procedures. So we are proposing the adoption of both of these provisions of the employee handbook.
All right, thanks, Nancy. Other questions? Hearing none, if someone would make a motion to approve those two handbook provisions.
I so move.
Motion by Pat, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are on the consent agenda items. If there is someone who would be willing to move approval of the consent agenda items, including the language for the disbursements.
Madam President, I move the approval of the consent agenda items and that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,699,246.31.
There is a motion by Lynn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda items have passed. Committee reports. First on the list is Facilities and Grounds. Mr. Holland.
Thank you. The Facilities Committee met January 30th. We had 3 agenda items. 2 of those have been discussed. One of them has been discussed tonight. That being the future secondary construction referendum financing projection that we heard that report from Brian Baer. And secondly, on the agenda, we discussed the rezoning process with the city that we're working on and working towards, and understand now that as as Tim has indicated, that the Common Council will be having an official hearing on that rezoning application on April 9th, following the referendum. And finally, we had a discussion regarding a potential collaborative effort with the soccer boosters on the development of a press box at the middle school site. And so we've taken that into consideration. They are probably going to be doing the lion's share of that, and we discussed the potential option of putting some funding towards that. However, the committee felt at this time that it just wasn't probably a good timing right now for us to take that kind of step. But in the future, those are some things that we'd like to be in a better position to do. So, taking questions.
Are there questions for Tom? No? Personnel Committee, Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee met Monday, January 30th. We discussed the handbook provisions with respect to teacher and support employee discipline, which we just previously approved. We had an update from Nancy on 2012-13 enrollment projections, and I don't have my note. I don't think there was any surprises there. Was there anything, Nancy, that was pretty relatively stable, as I recall? I don't seem to have the numbers there. And we had the update on the tentative agreement with the teachers union, which we've also just taken care of. And finally, the closed session for confidential disciplinary matters and to discuss the preliminary notice of non-renewal for teachers.
Thank you. Any questions for Mark?
Just want to add, the preliminary notice of non-renewal of teachers. When the legislature took action on the open enrollment bill, this was part of that was tagged on to that bill. And as a result, the legislature moved the open enrollment notification dates forward 2 months. So we first thought we would have to take action to have preliminary notice by the end of February, and now it will be the end of April. So we were preparing this while the legislature was deliberating, but that has now changed and the date has moved forward, and that's something certainly we have supported, and we know Dean Knutson and Sheila Harsdorf supported that as well on our behalf.
All right. And finally, Finance.
Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met on Monday, February 6th. The committee had 4 items on the agenda. The first 3 items on the agenda were covered in detail during this meeting. The last item on the agenda was a review of the 2011 and 12 second quarter financials. Tim reviewed the budget in detail, and the budget is on target and where we need to be at as far as no surprises to report. So despite having some budget challenges, we're doing a very good job at managing expense and controlling our expenses.
Great. Thank you. And with that, we will be adjourning to closed session. We will not be returning to open session. So if there is a board member who would make a motion for adjournment to closed session, reading the language on the agenda.
Madam President, I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent B, parent C, parent F, for consideration of discipline of specific employees.
All right, there's a motion by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. Roll call vote.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaiser Schott, aye.
We are adjourned to closed session. Thank you.